Good day, everyone. We are the Group 1, and our topic is all about the verbal elements. So, our topic is consist of 6 parts. So, first, we have the writer's purpose, the plot, the characters, settings, themes, and lastly, the style. So, first, we will go into the writer's purpose. So, the writer's purpose for writing any piece of literature is the reason the writer created that particular piece. So, the deep meaning of this statement is that every piece of literature has a purpose or intention behind it, and the writer's reason for creating that piece is what drives its creation. So, for example, a writer is writing a funny story or a comedy. So the writer's purpose on that is for us to entertain. So writers write for many reasons. So this is what I'm talking about. There is no just one purpose that motivates people to write. So in other words, the writer's purpose for writing is the underlying motivation or goal that they had in mind when they are creating the work. So next, let's discuss the six types of the writer's purpose. So first, we have to entertain. The writer writes the story for the reader's enjoyment. Most fiction stories, plays, and comedies are written to entertainment. So this is again what I'm talking about earlier. So this is to entertain, also to provide the readers with enjoyment and amusement through their writing by creating engaging characters and interesting plot of the story. So next we have to explain. The writer writes the story for the reader to have an idea of how something works. So for example, the writer wants to explain how a plant grows into a tree. So he will write the process on how a plant grew and became a tree. This will help the reader to understand and learn the the process. So next we have to convince or persuade. So the writer is trying to make the reader agree with his or her ideas. So the writer can use persuasive language, logical arguments to convince the readers on a particular viewpoint. So this now I will give you some of the persuasive language that we can use for us so that the readers will agree on our statement. So for example, we have the sentence, it's time for a change. So, do you want to be a part of something that new and exciting? The other one is, join us and see for yourself the benefits of our product that can bring to your life. So, in this case, the the readers can really believe that something is happening because of some believable words that the writer is using. Next we have to retell. So a writer does a retelling of a piece of literature from someone else. This is not an original work. So you can retell a historical event, a personal experience, or a myth, giving readers a fresh perspectives on a history and engaging them in a narrative. To retell a historical event para mas masabtan ug makarelate ang mga magbasa. So, for example, pareha kang Aesop. Although daghan siya og mga stories nga kuan almost 700 kapin iyang mga stories, pero not all of his stories is originated by him. Naghapon mga stories niya nga iya lang gi-retell. So, next is to give information. So, the writer writes only facts. This type of writer's purpose is only to give fact and no opinion. So, you can use your writing to provide factual information on a particular subject, especially on a research paper or a news article. So because news research paper and news article is crucial, this will be you will only be using factual statements, or you can use statements that you can provide facts or true ideas on it. So the last is to criticize. The writer makes their opinion known about the particular subject. It can be positive or negative. So you can use your writing to evaluate and criticize a particular work, idea, or policy, pointing out its strengths and also its weaknesses, and also providing recommendations for improvement, because the goal of criticism is to provide feedback that can help improve the ability of the work or the argument being processed. So, to criticize the AI is not only to give negative feedback on something. It can also help you to improve your work, because there are recommendations of improvement. So that would be all for my part. So the next topic will be reported by Miss Leona.
Good morning, everyone. Now I am the next reporter, and my topic is all about the plot of the visual elements of a story. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Leona Nicolette D. Orsiga. So, what is plot? A plot is a literary term used to describe the sequence of events that make up a story. A plot is a sequence of events that occurred in that story. It is also known as a storyline. In general, there are three parts of a plot: the beginning, middle, and end. A plot generally consists of several interconnected parts, including exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. Now let's chunk it. So first is the exposition. So what is exposition? Exposition is the beginning of the story that introduces the setting, characters, and other important background information. Most children literature exposition part always comes in once upon a time or one day words in the beginning of the story. In this part, the characters are being introduced as well as the settings of the story. Next is the rising action, the series of events that build tension and lead up to the climax of the story. In this part, the problems and conflicts will appear. If you can still remember the story that I have told you, The Ant and the Grasshopper, the rising action of that is that the ants are still looking for food while the grasshopper is still playing in the river. Rising action is an event that leads up to the climax or the thrilling part of a story. Next is climax, the point of highest tension or drama in the story, often the turning point where the protagonist faces a critical decision or challenge. So back in the story, The Ant and the Grasshopper, the climax there is when the grasshopper woke up without the sun shining. That's the climax of the story. The next part is the falling action, the events that occur after the climax, leading to the resolution of the story. The falling action of the story is that when the grasshopper was looking for food, he saw the house of the ant eating happily with a warm environment. And the last part is the resolution, the final outcome of the story, where loose ends are tied up and the story comes to a conclusion. Mostly in the resolution part of a children's literature, the story ending up teaching us a lesson or the problem has been solved. And that would be all, and next will be the characters elements of a story that will be reported by Miss Peleo.
Good morning, Mom. Good morning, classmates. My name is Rylin R. Pileo, and I'm the next reporter of this group. So my topic is all about characters. So we have here the 7 categories of characters. But first, let us first read what is characters. So characters are the players within a story. They can be human beings, animals, aliens, or even sentient objects, as long as they make decisions within the story. Their characters, most stories have a main character or multiple main characters. Some have antagonists who prevent the main characters from achieving their goals. There are also side characters, romantic interest, and many other roles that fictional characters can take in a story. Now, let's move on to the 7 categories of characters. So first is the protagonist. For most of us, the protagonist is a very recognizable concept. This is the main character, or the big cheese, the show star. Most of the action revolves around them, and we're supposed to care about them the most. The protagonist is typically, but not always, the narrator is stories written in the first-person perspective. The protagonist is the story's primary character. They should have a logical backstory, personal motivation, and a character arc that follows them throughout the story. The protagonist is the figure with whom the audience has the strongest emotional attachment. Second is the antagonist. If you're an antagonist, you're going to antagonize. You undercut, hinder, fight, or otherwise oppose one individual in particular. So the protagonist is almost always virtuous, whereas the antagonist is almost always wicked. And this is the cause of their struggle. This isn't always the case, especially if the protagonist is an anti-hero with noble qualities, and the adversary is an anti-villain with noble qualities. Even yet, the protagonist is usually the hero and the adversary is the villain. The third one is love interest. The protagonist's love interest is the object of his or her desire. A fascinating and three-dimensional love interest is essential. In some form or another, romance appears in almost every narrative. There has to be some love interest involved, whether it's the primary storyline, a subplot, or simply a blip on the narrative radar. So this love interest is usually, but not always, a deuteragonist. Hence why this separate category. A love interest can be identified by the protagonist's emotional reaction. However, this reaction can be varied. Some love interests make the protagonist swoon, while others make the protagonist sneer. The fourth one is the confidant. So this character is the protagonist's best buddy or the sidekick, and the protagonist's goal is typically achieved through the confidant, though not every narrative requires one. A confidant is more difficult to find, especially because many novels center on the MC's love affair to exclude other connections. On the other hand, the confidant may be one of the most important connections a protagonist has in a novel. Confidants are frequently close friends, but they may also be prospective lovers or mentors, even when the protagonist is the hesitant to express their ideas and emotions with others. They do so with this individual. On the other hand, the confidant may be someone the MC goes to not because they want, but because they want to. Have any other options? The next one is the deuteragonist. These personalities frequently cross paths with confidants. A deuteragonist is a character who is close to the protagonist, but whose character development does not exactly match the story's primary narrative. A major protagonist and a secondary deuteragonist are common in most tales or groups of deuteragonists. This is the figure that isn't quite in the spotlight but is getting there. The sidekick would be the deuteragonist's comic book equivalent. They're frequently seen with the protagonist, offering guidance, conspiring against their foes, and generally assisting them. Their presence and close relationship with the protagonist provide warmth and heart to the tale, making it about more than simply the hero's journey, but also the friends they make along the way. Of course, not all secondary characters are pals. Some are arch enemies, but even the unfriendly deuteragonists add to the story's richness. The next one is the tertiary characters. Occupy the story's universe but aren't always connected to the primary plot. These small characters can fulfill a variety of roles and have various levels of personal energy. They appear in only one or two scenes throughout the novel, flitting in and out of the MC's life. A well-rounded narrative, however, still requires a few tertiaries. After all, we all have them in real life. The barista you only see once a week, the strange man in a class, and any realistic fictional narrative should contain them as well.
Morning everyone, I'm the next reporter today. I will be discussing the other elements of children adolescent literature. So the next element is setting. So here are the 5 importance of setting. So first, connects the story's elements. An effective story setting connect the characters to the plot and ties together the story's theme and events. So if we are going to choose a setting sa movie or play, dapat nakatugma jud siya sa plot and sa story theme. Like for example, sa atong play, ang theme is mythology. So ang setting or props na atong gibuhat is all about ancient, sinaunang panahon, during the god and goddesses. And sa conflict na ay fighting scenes, conflict, and then the flow of story should be in sequence or chronological order. The second is builds meaning to the narrative. Without the setting of a story, may not be as much meaning to be gleaned since setting provides context. So, a well-built narrative transforms a complicated idea into a powerful story. It clarifies, compels, and convinces. It has both emotional impact and rational substance. Ang story is dapat siya emotional impact, especially towards the audience to gain their attention. Ang setting is important to jud siya because it add meanings and helps the audience to experience and see the point of view of the characters. The third is elicits emotional response in the reader. When readers are engaged in your story setting, they will be actively reading and invested in experiencing the narrative and how it will unfold. So, dapat jud makuha nato ang atensyon and interest sa mga readers, especially their response and reactions. In order for us to know that they are satisfied sa atong gibuhat or gi-choose na literary pieces. So, the next is helps readers visualize your story. Authors use story setting to describe the environment, time, and place for the reader, which provides more context and engages the reader. So, when readers visualize as they read on information from the text as well as their own prior knowledge to create mental images of what is happening in the story. Each reader may create unique images as prior knowledge will differ different between each reader. So the last is improve the story's flow with an effective, well-crafted setting in your narrative. The plot will flow together well and the events will feel real. So, the flow of story should be in chronological order, interesting and establish clear goals para gignahan maminaw, mubasa, ug mutanaw ang mga tao. And that's all.
Hi everyone, I am Kate B. Caderao, the next reporter. Today, I will be discussing the other elements of children adolescent literature. So the next element is the theme. So theme refers to the philosophical question your story explores. Often, theme is revealed in this lesson the protagonist needs to learn. Theme can also be revealed through the core conflict between the protagonist and the antagonist. So in short, theme is a underlying message or the big idea of the story. For example, the theme of the story Kid and the Chameleon, written by Sherry Maberry, is about learning how to accept differences. There are many themes in a children adolescent literature, but here are some common examples. First is a relationship focused theme. Some of the examples are family and friendship. The other one is theme about emotion. Some of the examples are accepting differences and compassion. Next is the theme related to behavior. Some of the examples are generosity and persistence. Then, life transition theme. Some of the examples are growing up and grief. Lastly, themes related to social issue. Some examples are fairness and injustice.
Now, let's move on to the next element, which is the style. So there are 4 writing styles, and those are expository, descriptive, persuasive, and narrative. So what are those? Style in literature is the literary element that describes the ways that the author uses words, the author's word choice, sentence structure, figurative language, and sentence arrangement all work together to establish mood, images, and meaning in the text. Style refers to the writer's choice of diction, sentence structure, literary techniques, and the use of rhythm. Your audience and writing purpose will determine your writing styles. So the 4 main types of writing styles are persuasive, narrative, expository, and descriptive. So what are those? Persuasive is for this writing style, the writer is trying to convince the reader of the validity of a certain position or argument. Persuasive writing includes the writer's opinions and provides justifications and evidence to support their claims. For example, letters of recommendation, cover letters, argumentative essays for academic papers. Next is the narrative. So often seen in longer writing samples, The purpose of this writing style is to share information in the context of a story. Narratives should include characters, conflicts, and settings. For examples, short stories, novels, poetry, and historical accounts. Next is the expository. This type of writing is used to explain a concept and share information to a broader audience. Expository writing provides evidences, statistics, or results and focuses on the facts of a certain topic. So, expository is somewhat you are exposing. This type is not meant to express opinion but facts. Examples: how to articles, textbooks, news stories, business, technical or scientific writing. And next is the descriptive. This type of writing is used to depict imagery to create a clear picture in the mind of the reader. This method helps the reader become more connected to the writing by appealing to their senses. Descriptive writing employs literary techniques such as similes, metaphors, allegory, and etc. to engage the audience. Example: poetry, fictional novels or plays, memoir, or first-hand account of events. In other words, expository means to inform, descriptive means to describe, persuasive is to convince, and narrative is to tell a story. And that would be all for the Group 1. Thank you for listening.